6 months later, Admiral Kang Ho stood in the same transport bay where he had first met Captain Minho, but everything around him had changed completely. His flagship was no longer a weapon of conquest and destruction. Instead, it had been converted into a mobile research station as part of the new Coalition Scientific Alliance. The view screen showed a sight that would have been impossible to imagine. Just half a year ago, human ships and Coalition vessels were working side by side to construct a massive space station. Former enemies were now colleagues, sharing technology and knowledge that had been kept secret for centuries. Status report: Admiral Kang Ho said to his new science officer, "The joint research project is running ahead of schedule." "Sir," the young officer replied, "human phase shifting technology combined with Coalition gravity manipulation systems has created possibilities that neither of our species had imagined working alone." Captain Minho's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral, we are ready to begin testing the new prototype vessel. Are your research teams prepared for the demonstration?" "We are ready when you are, Captain." Admiral Kang Ho watched as a strange new ship detached itself from the construction site. The vessel was unlike anything that had ever been built before. It was neither purely human nor purely Coalition in design, but something entirely new that combined the best features of both technologies. The ship was sleek and efficient like human designs, but it also had the robust durability that Coalition engineers were famous for. The hull seemed to shift and change as different systems activated, showing that it incorporated human phase shifting technology. At the same time, massive gravity field generators created visible distortions in space around the vessel. These were Coalition inventions that had been improved and refined by human engineering techniques. "Ready for test activation," the prototype captain announced. The hybrid ship engaged its experimental drive system and simply vanished from normal space. It reappeared instantly on the other side of the solar system, having traveled billions of kilometers in less than a heartbeat. "Instantaneous travel," the science officer whispered in amazement. "We have just eliminated the need for hyperspace lanes completely." Captain Minho, Admiral Kang Ho said into his communicator, "Congratulations. You have managed to change the entire galaxy once again." "We have changed it, Admiral," the human captain replied. "This was a team effort that required both human innovation and Coalition engineering expertise." Later that evening, Admiral Kang Ho sat alone in his private quarters, recording his daily log entry. The view from his window showed dozens of ships from different species, all working together on projects that would have been impossible just months before. Personal log entry: he began, "I finally understand why the humans sent only one ship to face our entire fleet. It was not simply about having superior technology, though they certainly possessed that. It was not about tactical advantages, though they had those as well." He paused, looking out at the stars that seemed brighter and more hopeful than they had in years. "They sent one ship because they wanted to demonstrate a different way of solving problems. They could have destroyed our entire fleet, but instead they chose to offer us redemption. They could have conquered the Coalition, but instead they chose to transform it. The old Coalition was built on the principle that might makes right," he continued. "The new alliance is built on the principle that cooperation makes everyone stronger. I spent my entire life as a conqueror, taking from others to build an empire. Now I am learning to be a builder, creating something better in cooperation with others." Admiral Kang Ho stood up and walked to his window where he could see the construction site more clearly. "The humans taught us that the strongest ship is not the one with the biggest weapons, it is the one with the best crew working together. The greatest fleet is not the one that destroys the most enemies. It is the one that makes the most friends, and the most powerful empire is not the one that conquers the most worlds. It is the one that inspires the most hope in others." He watched as a group of human and Coalition engineers worked together to install a new piece of equipment on the space station. They moved with perfect coordination, each person knowing exactly what the others needed. "Tomorrow we begin construction on the first joint colony," he said into his recorder. "Humans and Coalition species working together to build something that belongs to everyone." The humans were right. "This is much better than conquest. This is creation." The Admiral paused his recording and looked back at the stars in the distance. He could see more ships arriving. Former Coalition enemies who had heard about the new alliance and wanted to join ships from species that had been conquered decades ago were now returning as equal partners. Just one ship, he said quietly to himself. They changed everything with just one ship, but it had not really been about the ship at all. Admiral Kang Ho realized it had been about the idea behind the ship, the belief that cooperation was better than conquest, the faith that even enemies could become friends given the right opportunity. On the space station construction site, human and coalition workers were celebrating the completion of another section. They had accomplished in 6 months what would have taken the old coalition years to achieve. The difference was simple. When people worked together willingly, they could accomplish amazing things. When they were forced to work through fear and intimidation, they could only do the minimum required. Admiral Kang Ho finished his log entry and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as more species joined the alliance. Each one would need to learn new ways of thinking and cooperating, but tonight he was content to watch the stars and remember how much had changed since that day when a single human ship had faced down the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. The future was going to be very different from the past, and for the first time in his long life, Admiral Kang Ho was excited to see what tomorrow would bring. Outside his window, the construction continued, human and coalition engineers working side by side to build something that had never existed before, a civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest, a civilization that proved the humans had been right all along. Sometimes the greatest strength came not from the biggest weapons or the most ships. Sometimes it came from the simple belief that former enemies could become friends. That single belief had been more powerful than 300 warships. That single belief had changed the galaxy forever, and it had all started with just one ship carrying a message of hope instead of destruction. The stars had never looked more beautiful than they did tonight. 1 year after the day that changed everything, Admiral Kang Ho stood in the same transport bay where he had first spoken with Captain Min Ho, but now the entire galaxy had been transformed. The room itself looked different, with new equipment and displays showing data from dozens of different worlds. Through the large viewing window, he could see something that would have been impossible just 12 months ago. The space around Earth was filled with ships from hundreds of different species, all working together on the largest construction project in galactic history. The Great Alliance Station was growing larger every day as new sections were added by teams of engineers from worlds that had been enemies for centuries. Human workers labored alongside coalition builders while former slaves worked as equals with their previous master status. Report, Admiral Kang Ho said to his science officer, who was now a young human woman named Dobinth. Joint research project continues to exceed all expectations, sir, she replied with obvious excitement. Human phase shifting technology, combined with coalition gravity manipulation and crystalline energy systems, has created possibilities that none of our species could have achieved alone. The new hyperspace bypass network is almost complete. We will be able to travel between any 2 points in the galaxy in less than 1 hour. Captain Min Ho's familiar voice came through the communication system. Admiral, we are ready to conduct the final test of the new deep space exploration vessel. Are your teams prepared? We have been ready for weeks, Captain. Admiral Kang Ho watched as the most advanced ship ever built detached itself from the construction site. The vessel was a masterpiece of cooperative engineering that combined the best technologies from dozens of different species. The hull was made from materials that shifted between different phases of matter. Human phase shifting technology allowed it to become completely invisible to sensors or pass through solid objects. Coalition gravity systems gave it incredible speed and maneuverability. Crystalline energy cores provided unlimited power, while insectoid hive mind networks allowed the crew to work with perfect coordination. The ship was not just a fusion of technologies, it was a symbol of what different species could accomplish when they worked together. Ready for final test sequence, the exploration ship captain announced. The hybrid vessel engaged its experimental drive system and simply stepped outside normal space and time. It reappeared instantly in a distant galaxy billions of light years away, then returned to Earth in the same heartbeat. Faster than light travel has just become obsolete, the science officer whispered. We can now travel anywhere in the universe instantly, Captain Min Ho. Admiral Kang Ho said into his communicator, once again you have helped us achieve something that seemed impossible. We Have achieved it together, Admiral the human captain. Replied, this technology belongs to all of us equally. No single species could have developed it alone. Later that evening, Admiral Kang Ho walked through the corridors of his converted research ship. The halls were filled with beings from dozens of different worlds, all working together on projects that would benefit everyone. He passed laboratories where human scientists worked with coalition researchers to develop new medical treatments. He saw workshops where former enemies were building tools and devices that would make life better for countless species. In the recreation areas, he watched as children from different worlds played together, speaking languages that mixed human words with coalition terms and sounds from species that had just joined the alliance. The admiral made his way to his private quarters, where he sat down to record his final log entry about the great transformation. Personal log, final entry. He began. It has been exactly 1 year since the day a single human ship faced our entire fleet and changed the course of galactic history. He looked out his window at the great Alliance station, which was now larger than most space cities. I have spent this year learning to see the universe in a completely different way. The humans taught us that strength does not come from the ability to destroy your enemies. It comes from the ability to turn your enemies into friends. The old coalition conquered worlds by force and ruled through fear. The new alliance grows stronger every day because worlds choose to join freely. They see what we are building together, and they want to be part of it. Admiral Kang Ho stood up and walked to his viewing window, where he could see the construction site more clearly. Today, we received applications for membership from 50 new species, including some that we had never encountered before. Word is spreading across the galaxy that there is now a place where different beings can work together as equals. The humans were right about everything. He continued, cooperation is more powerful than conquest. Creation is more valuable than destruction. Hope is stronger than fear. Tomorrow, we launched the first deep space exploration mission with crews from 20 different species, working together to discover new worlds and new possibilities. He paused to watch as a group of young beings from different species worked together to install a new section of the station. They moved with perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly what the others needed. But tonight I want to remember how this all began, he said quietly. A single human ship carrying a message of hope instead of destruction. One captain who chose to offer redemption instead of revenge. The admiral looked up at the stars, which seemed to shine brighter than they ever had before. Captain Min Ho taught us that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from convincing them to become your friends. He showed us that the most powerful weapon is not the one that can destroy the most targets, but the one that can create the most possibilities. The communication system chimed softly, and Captain Min Ho's voice filled the room. Admiral, we are receiving signals from distant galaxies. Species that have heard about the Alliance and want to learn more about our cooperative approach to civilization. Admiral Kang Ho smiled and activated his communication system. Captain, it looks like our work is just beginning. There is an entire universe out there waiting to discover what we have learned about working together. Indeed, Admiral, the human replied. But we have proven that even the most impossible challenges can be overcome when different species choose to help each other instead of fighting each other. The admiral ended his log entry and prepared for sleep. But first he took one final look out his window at the Great Alliance station. At this moment, thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds were working together to build something that had never existed before, a civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest, a galaxy where former enemies had become friends, a future where hope was stronger than fear. And it had all started with just one ship carrying one simple message. That message had been more powerful than 300 warships. The silence on Admiral Kang Ho's bridge stretched like a rope pulled tight enough to break. His crew members stood frozen at their stations, watching their instruments show readings that made no sense. According to everything they had been taught about technology and warfare, the human systems continued to play with coalition technology like a child playing with toys. The artificial gravity fluctuated in gentle waves that made everyone feel slightly dizzy. The lights dimmed and brightened in slow rhythms that somehow seemed almost musical. Captain Min Ho, the admiral, said slowly, each word carefully chosen. You are asking me to abandon a military operation that has been approved by the highest levels of coalition government even if I wanted to agree to your terms. My superiors would never accept such a decision. Actually, Admiral, they already have, Captain Minho replied. What engineer Hay-1? Please show the Admiral the communications we have been monitoring. The main screen split into multiple sections showing frantic conversations happening across coalition space. High-ranking officials were shouting at each other in dozens of different languages. The translation systems were working overtime to keep up with the flood of panic discussions. Words like human technology and immediate withdrawal kept appearing in the translated text. Leaders who had never shown fear in their entire careers were now demanding answers about how a single human ship could neutralize the coalition's most powerful fleet. We have been broadcasting this entire conversation to every coalition world, Captain Minho explained calmly. Your people are watching one human vessel completely neutralize your most advanced military force. The political implications are quite significant. Admiral Kang Ho felt his stomach drop as he realized what the humans had done. They had not just defeated his fleet, they had made sure that every coalition citizen could watch the defeat happen in real time. The coalition's power was built on fear and respect. People obeyed because they believed coalition military forces were invincible. If that belief was destroyed, the entire empire would begin to collapse. You are destroying everything we have built, the Admiral said bitterly. No, Admiral, we are giving you a chance to build something better. The coalition could become a true alliance instead of a conquest empire, trade partnerships instead of forced tribute, cooperation instead of domination, and if we choose to continue exactly as we have been doing, Captain Minho's expression became serious and thoughtful, then you will face the consequences, he said quietly. Admiral, would you like to know why Earth really sent only one ship to meet your fleet? Admiral Kang Ho found himself nodding even though he was afraid of the answer. Because we did not want to be unfair to you. Our military analysts ran detailed computer simulations of this encounter. They calculated that sending two ships would be excessive force. The words hit the Admiral like a hammer blow. Two ships. The humans considered two vessels to be too much firepower to use against 300 coalition warships. You could have sent two ships, he asked weakly. We could have sent 1,000, Captain Minho replied. Our shipyards have been operating at full capacity for 50 years. We have been preparing for this day since we first learned about the coalition's existence. The human captain walked to the window of his bridge and looked out at the stars. We knew you would eventually come for us. Your history made that clear. So we spent 5 decades getting ready. We built ships, we developed new technology, we prepared for war while hoping for peace. Pilot Su Jin looked up from her controls. Captain, we are receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Put it through, please. A new voice joined the conversation, speaking in clear coalition standard. Admiral Kang Ho, this is Admiral Young Su of the Earth Defense Force. The Coalition High Council has just transmitted an unconditional surrender message to all coalition military commanders. The Admiral's legs suddenly felt weak and he collapsed into his command chair. All coalition fleets are ordered to return to home space immediately, the Earth Admiral continued. The Council has also agreed to begin negotiations for a new treaty between Earth and the coalition. Admiral Kang Ho stared at the screen where Captain Minho sat, looking genuinely sympathetic. I'm sorry, Admiral, the human captain said gently. We truly did not want it to end this way. We offered trade agreements, we proposed cultural exchanges. We suggested peaceful coexistence. Your government chose conquest instead. How long? The Admiral asked, in a voice barely above a whisper. How long have you been planning this? Since first contact, Captain Minho replied. We studied the coalition's history, we learned about your methods. We knew you would eventually demand our submission, so we prepared. We innovated, we advanced, we did what humans always do when faced with impossible odds. What is that? We adapted, and we overcame. Around the bridge of the coalition, flagship crew members were beginning to shut down their systems. The withdrawal order was being transmitted to every ship, and the fleet captains were already plotting courses back to their homeworlds. The great coalition fleet that had arrived with such confidence was preparing to leave in defeat, but Admiral Kang Ho barely noticed the activity around him. He was thinking about everything that had just happened, trying to understand how his entire worldview had been turned upside down in less than one day. Your ship is so small, he said to Captain Minho. Your crew is tiny. How Do you pack so much capability into such a limited space? The human captain smiled. Efficiency, Admiral. When you have conquered 1,000 worlds, you can afford to be wasteful with resources. When you are one small world surrounded by potential enemies, you learn to make every resource count. But the technology phase shifting artificial intelligence system penetration, we have never encountered anything like it. That is because you stopped innovating centuries ago, Captain Minho explained. The Coalition has been using essentially the same basic technology for a very long time. You simply made everything bigger and added more weapons. We took a completely different approach. Engineer Hay-1 held up a small device no bigger than her palm. This is our ship's main computer core. She said it contains more processing power than your entire fleet combined. It also manages our navigation, our weapons, our life support, and our communications. Admiral Kang Ho stared at the tiny device in disbelief. That is impossible. Our computer cores take up entire deck levels because you use old, inefficient technology, Hay-1 explained patiently. You make things bigger instead of making them better. We make things smaller and smarter. Captain Minho walked back to the communication screen. Admiral, your people have been conquerors for so long that you have forgotten how to be builders. You take resources instead of creating them. You destroy civilizations instead of improving them. And humans are different. The Admiral asked. We had to be different, the human captain replied. Earth is one small world surrounded by empty space. We could not conquer our way to more resources like you did. We had to learn to work together to share what we had to innovate. Solutions to problems. Every human achievement came from cooperation, not conquest. Pilot Sujin looked up from her station. Admiral, what will you do now? Your empire is falling apart. Your subject worlds are already declaring independence. Admiral Kang Ho felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. I do not know, he admitted. I have been a soldier my entire life. I do not know how to be anything else. You could learn, Captain Minho suggested quietly. The coalition does not have to end completely. It could transform. Instead of an empire built on fear, it could become an alliance built on mutual benefit. You would help us? The Admiral asked in amazement. After everything we have done to other species, that is what humans do, Captain Minho replied. Simply, we help, we build, we create. We believe that every species deserves a chance to become better than they were. We believe in the possibility of redemption. Admiral Kang Ho felt his confidence cracking and breaking like ice under the weight of a heavy stone. The cheerful message from Earth continued to flash across every screen in his fleet, while his crew members stared in helpless terror at their compromised systems. The humans had just demonstrated that they could take complete control of coalition technology whenever they wanted. They had walked through the most advanced security systems in the galaxy as if they were simple door locks. This is not possible, the Admiral said, but his voice was barely above a whisper. Our technology is the most advanced in the entire galaxy. We have been perfecting these systems for thousands of years, was the most advanced, Captain Minho corrected gently. You have been conquering worlds for thousands of years using essentially the same basic principles over and over again. We have only been exploring space for a few centuries, but we have been innovating and improving during that entire time. The human captain leaned forward slightly in his chair. While you were perfecting old technology, we were creating entirely new technology. While you were making your ships bigger and adding more weapons, we were making our ships smarter and more efficient. Around the bridge of the Coalition flagship, crew members were frantically trying to regain control of their own systems. The communications officer was typing commands as fast as his 6 fingers could move, but every screen continued to show the same cheerful message from Earth. The weapons officer was attempting to override the human control of his targeting systems, but instead of weapon status displays, he was seeing cartoon images of smiling human faces. Even the environmental controls had been affected. The artificial gravity was fluctuating just enough to make everyone feel slightly sick, and the temperature kept shifting between too hot and too cold. Engineer Hay-1 spoke up from her station on the human ship. Captain, should I show them the really impressive capabilities? Not yet, Hay-1, Captain Minho replied. Let us see if the Admiral is ready to discuss reasonable terms first. Admiral Kang Ho looked around his bridge at his terrified crew members. His communications officer had given up trying to restore normal operations and was simply staring at his screens in defeat. His weapons officers were watching displays that showed system compromised in bright rainbow colors. The Tactical officer was attempting to analyze the human ship, but his scanners were showing impossible readings. According to his instruments, the human vessel was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere in the fleet. Do you want the Admiral asked quietly. Simple, Captain Minho replied. Leave Earth alone, leave all human colonies alone, in fact, leave this entire sector of space alone. Return to your homeworlds and consider whether conquest is really the best way to build a successful civilization, and, if we refuse, Captain Minho's smile remained gentle, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Admiral, you brought 300 ships to intimidate one world. We sent one ship to handle 300. What do you think would happen if Earth actually felt threatened enough to send a real fleet? The words hit Admiral Kang Ho like a physical blow. A real fleet. This was not even a real demonstration of human military power. This single ship, with its impossible technology, was just the beginning. How many ships do you have? He asked Captain Minho shrugged as if the question was not very important enough. He said, our shipyards have been quite busy for the past 50 years. We knew this day would eventually come. We have been preparing. The human captain gestured toward the planet below them. Every human colony, every research station, every mining operation has been building ships and developing new technology. We learned about the Coalition's history when we first made contact with other species. We knew you would eventually come for us, so we got ready on the Coalition flagship. The scanner operator suddenly looked up from his instruments with wide, frightened eyes. Sir, he said in a trembling voice, I am detecting massive energy signatures coming from the planet. Admiral Kang Ho turned to look at the main viewing screen. Earth still hung in space, looking peaceful and beautiful, but now there were new contacts appearing on the tactical display ships. Were rising from the planet's surface, not just one or two, but dozens, then hundreds. The vessels were of different sizes and designs, but they all shared the same smooth, elegant lines as Captain Minho's ships. Some were small and fast, like deadly fighters. Others were medium-sized with obvious weapon systems. Still others were massive construction vessels that looked like they could build entire space stations. How many ships are you seeing, Admiral? Kang Ho asked his scanner operator. The young officer checked his instruments again and again as if he could not believe the readings. Over 500, sir, and more are still launching from the planet. Captain Minho nodded approvingly. The first wave, he said casually. We have been building ships in underground facilities for decades. Your intelligence networks never detected them because we used completely different construction methods. The human captain stood up from his command chair and walked to a window where he could look out at the growing fleet. We also have orbital shipyards that your sensors cannot detect. We have mining operations in asteroid belts that are invisible to Coalition technology. We have research stations in places you never thought to look. Admiral Kang Ho watched the tactical display as more and more human ships appeared around Earth. Each one represented technology that the Coalition had never seen before. Each one was a potential threat to his entire fleet. But we are not unreasonable people, Captain Minho continued. We do not want to fight unless we have to. We would much prefer to solve this problem peacefully. The human captain turned back to face the communication screen. Admiral, I'm going to show you something else. Please remember that this is still just a demonstration. He nodded to his engineer Haewon, who began working at her station. Suddenly, every Coalition ship in the fleet began to move. The massive vessels started rotating and repositioning themselves without any commands from their crews. The ships were dancing in space, performing a complex pattern that spelled out words in the old Coalition ceremonial language. The message was simple and clear. Peace is better than war. Admiral Kang Ho realized that the humans were not just controlling his ships. Computer systems, they were controlling the ships themselves, the engines, the steering systems, the attitude controls. Everything was under human command. We could make your ships fight each other, Captain Minho said quietly. We could send them flying into the sun. We could make them attack your own colonies, but we choose not to do those things. The human captain sat back down in his command chair. We choose to offer you a chance to leave peacefully and return to your own worlds. We choose to give you time to think about whether the Coalition's way of doing things is really the best way. What happens if we choose to continue as we have been doing? Admiral Kang Ho asked. Captain Minho's expression became serious for the first time since the conversation began. Then you will face the consequences, He said simply, "Admiral, would you like to know the real reason why Earth sent only one ship to meet your entire fleet despite everything that had happened?" Admiral Kong Ho found himself nodding because we did not want to be unfair, the human captain said. Our military analysts calculated that sending 2 ships would be overkill. The words struck Admiral Kong Ho like lightning. 2 ships. The humans thought that 2 vessels would be too much firepower to use against 300 coalition warships. "Admiral, how many ships could you have sent?" the admiral asked in a whisper. Captain Minho smiled sadly. "We could have sent 1,000. Our shipyards produce more vessels in a single month than most coalition worlds build in a year. We have been preparing for this confrontation for half a century." The human captain looked out at his growing fleet. "We did not want to destroy you, Admiral. We wanted to give you a chance to choose a better path. We sent 1 ship because we hoped it would be enough to make you understand. We sent 1 ship because we still believe in the possibility of peace." Admiral Kong Ho felt his entire worldview collapsing around him. Everything he had believed about coalition superiority was wrong. Everything he had been taught about human weakness was false. His empire was not the strongest force in the galaxy. It was not even close, and the humans had just proven it with a single ship. The communication channel buzzed with strange static as Admiral Kong Ho tried to make sense of what he had just heard. Around him on the bridge, his crew members looked at each other with nervous expressions. Some of them had started to back away from their stations, as if the human on the screen might somehow reach through and grab them. The admiral's forearms trembled slightly as he struggled to control his emotions. He had conquered dozens of worlds and faced countless enemies, but none had ever spoken to him with such calm confidence. This human captain, Minho, seemed completely unafraid, even though he was surrounded by enough firepower to destroy 1,000 ships. "Like his captain Minho," the admiral said slowly, forcing his voice to remain steady, "I will give you one final chance to speak with sense and reason. You command 1 small ship. We command 300 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. Our weapons can turn your entire planet into floating debris. How exactly do you plan to force us to surrender?" The human captain leaned back in his chair, and Admiral Kang Ho noticed that he looked completely relaxed. His hands rested casually on the arms of his command chair, and his breathing was slow and even. It was as if facing an entire battle fleet was just another ordinary day for him. "Admiral, may I ask you something?" Captain Minho said. "In all your years of conquest and battle, how many species have you encountered that sent only 1 ship to face your entire fleet?" The question struck Admiral Kang Ho like a physical blow. His scales shifted from blue to a deeper purple color, which among his people meant deep thought and growing concern. He had led coalition forces for over 40 years and had participated in hundreds of military operations. "None," he admitted reluctantly. "Every species we have ever faced either sends everything they have in a desperate final battle, or they surrender immediately when they see our fleet." "Exactly, Captain." Minho nodded as if the admiral had just proven his point. "So why do you think humans would be different? Why would we send just 1 ship to meet your entire armada unless we had a very good reason?" The question hung in the air like a dark cloud that blocked out all light. Admiral Kang Ho realized that he had been asking himself the same thing ever since the human vessel had appeared. It made no sense from any military perspective. No species was foolish enough to throw away their lives in such a pointless gesture, but humans were also not known for being suicidal. They had shown themselves to be clever and resourceful in their previous encounters with coalition forces. They had managed to evacuate entire colonies without leaving a trace. They had avoided capture and questioning for years. So what did they know that he did not? "Captain," the admiral said carefully, choosing his words, "are you suggesting that your single ship is somehow more powerful than our entire fleet?" "I am not suggesting anything, Admiral." Captain Minho replied with that same calm smile. "I am simply stating facts. Your fleet is very impressive, and I am sure it has served you well in previous campaigns. But it is also predictable. You follow standard coalition tactics. You use standard coalition weapons. You think in standard coalition ways." The human paused and looked directly into the camera as if he could see through the screen into Admiral Kang Ho's eyes. "Humans are not standard on the bridge of the human ship." Captain Minho glanced at his crew members. His pilot was a young woman named Sujin, who had been chosen for this mission because of her incredible reflexes and ability to think quickly under pressure. She gave him a confident thumbs-up signal. His weapons officer was a man called Ji-hoon who had spent years studying coalition military technology and tactics. He nodded once to show that all systems were ready and functioning perfectly. His chief engineer was a woman named Hae-won who had helped design many of the advanced systems that made this mission possible. She showed him a bright green indicator light on her control panel. Everything was ready, Admiral. Captain Minho continued, I'm going to demonstrate something for you. Please do not interpret this as an attack or act of aggression. It is simply a small preview of what human technology can accomplish. Before Admiral Kang-ho could respond or give any orders to his crew, the human ship simply vanished from all their sensors. Where did it go? The Admiral roared at his scanner operator. His voice echoed through the bridge like thunder. Sir, the scanner operator stammered while frantically checking his instruments. It is still there, but it is also not there. It is moving through our fleet, but it is passing directly through our ships as if they were not even solid matter. On the main viewing screen, the Coalition crew watched in horror as the human vessel flickered in and out of existence. It would appear briefly in the space between two Coalition battleships, then disappear again only to reappear somewhere else entirely. The ship moved through the fleet like a ghost dancing through a graveyard. It passed through the hulls of Coalition vessels without causing any damage or setting off any alarms. It was as if the laws of physics had suddenly decided to ignore the human ship completely. This is impossible, Admiral Kang-ho whispered as he watched the display. Matter cannot pass through solid matter. It violates every law of science we know. The human ship reappeared in its original position directly in front of the Admiral's flagship. Captain Minho was still sitting calmly in his command chair, and his crew was still working at their stations as if nothing unusual had happened. That demonstration is called phase-shifting technology, Captain Minho explained in the same casual tone someone might use to describe the weather. We discovered the principles about 50 years ago when we first began exploring quantum mechanics in detail. The human captain gestured toward something off-screen. It is very useful for avoiding obstacles or enemy weapons fire. A ship that can shift its matter into a different phase of existence cannot be touched by conventional attacks. We can move through solid barriers, walk through walls, or in this case pass through your warships without any difficulty. Admiral Kang-ho felt his world beginning to collapse around him. Phase shifting was theoretical technology that Coalition scientists had been trying to develop for centuries. Their best researchers said it was impossible to achieve with current understanding of physics, yet this human had just demonstrated it as easily as turning on a light. That is just a defensive capability, the Admiral said, but his voice cracked with uncertainty. You still cannot fight 300 warships with one small vessel, Captain. Minho tilted his head slightly as if considering the challenge. Can we not, he asked quietly. Sujin, please show the Admiral our offensive capabilities. The young woman at the pilot station smiled, and her fingers began dancing across her control panel. Suddenly, every ship in the Coalition fleet began receiving the same message on their emergency communication channels, but it was not just a simple audio transmission. Each ship received complete data packages containing detailed information about their own specifications, crew manifests, weapons capabilities, and even their current tactical battle plans. How are you accessing our secure military networks? Admiral Kang-ho demanded. We are not accessing them, Captain Minho replied. We are rewriting them. Human artificial intelligence technology is quite advanced. While you have been speaking with me, our computer systems have been learning everything there is to know about your fleet. The human gestured toward his weapons officer ship. Designs, weapon systems, shield frequencies, crew assignments, supply levels, fuel reserves, even your personal service records. Admiral, we now know more about your fleet than you. Ji-hoon looked up from his weapons station. Captain, I have established target locks on all 300 ships. Shall I demonstrate our penetration capabilities? Just a small demonstration. Ji-hoon, something harmless that will not cause any injuries. Understood. Sir, across the entire Coalition fleet, every ship's external lights began flashing in perfect synchronization. The pattern was complex and beautiful, like a carefully choreographed dance performed by hundreds of massive vessels. Then the external display screens on every ship began showing the same Message in bright, cheerful letters, hello from Earth, have a nice dia with a message cycled through every language in the coalition. Database including several that were supposed to be highly classified military codes that only senior officers should know. We are now inside all of your computer systems, Captain Minho explained calmly. We have complete control over your ships. We could disable your weapons, shut down your life support systems, or send your entire fleet flying directly into the nearest star. The human captain's smile never wavered. Instead, we decided to send you a friendly greeting. The darkness of space was broken by 300 massive ships hanging like death itself above the blue planet called Earth. Admiral Kang Ho stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, watching the world below spin slowly in its orbit, his four powerful arms crossed over his chest as he studied the readings that flowed across the glowing screens around him. The ships of the Galactic Coalition stretched out in perfect formation, each one bristling with weapons that could turn entire cities into dust. The largest vessels were the size of small moons, their hulls covered in thick armor that had never been penetrated by enemy fire. Smaller fighter ships darted between the giants like angry insects ready to swarm down upon any target. Their commander Cho's Kang Ho was proud of this fleet. It represented the combined military might of 47 different species, all united under coalition rule. His own people, the Drakmari, had contributed the heavy battleships with their devastating plasma cannons. The insectoid hive minds had provided the fast attack craft that moved in perfect coordination. The crystalline resonance had brought their shield ships that could protect entire squadrons from harm for over 2,000 years. The coalition had used fleets like this one to bring order to the galaxy. Any species that refused to join willingly was simply conquered and absorbed into the empire. It was efficient, it was effective. It was the way things had always been done, but these humans were proving to be more troublesome than most. The admiral shifted his weight, making the metal deck plates creak under his massive frame. His scales rippled with the deep blue color that showed his growing annoyance. These humans had been nothing but problems since they first crawled out of their little solar system 50 years ago. Most new species fell into one of two categories when they encountered the coalition. The smart ones took one look at the massive fleets and endless resources and immediately requested membership. They understood that joining meant protection, trade opportunities, and access to advanced technology. The foolish ones tried to fight and were quickly crushed before being forced to join anyway. Humans had chosen a third option. They simply ignored the coalition completely. When coalition diplomats arrived at human colonies, the humans would listen politely to offers of membership, then politely decline. They showed no fear of coalition military power. They expressed no interest in coalition technology. They just wanted to be left alone to do their own thing. At first, the coalition had been amused by this strange attitude. Most species were eager to gain access to galactic civilization. The humans seemed content to remain isolated, working on their own small worlds and trading only among themselves. But isolation was not acceptable to the coalition. Every species must be part of the empire. There could be no independent powers in the galaxy, no matter how small or peaceful. They claimed the Beatty situation had grown worse over the past 10 years. Human colonies had begun expanding into regions that the coalition considered off-limits. The rim worlds were sacred territory set aside for coalition research stations and military bases, yet humans had simply moved in and started building cities there. When coalition forces had arrived to remove the human settlers, they found empty colonies. The humans had vanished without a trace, taking all their equipment and technology with them. Security recordings showed the colonists loading their belongings onto ships and departing, but no one could track where they had gone. It was impossible to make entire populations disappear yet. Somehow, the humans had managed it not once, but 7 times in 7 different star systems. Each time coalition forces arrived ready to enforce evacuation orders, they found nothing but empty buildings and abandoned equipment. The most disturbing part was that the humans always seemed to know exactly when coalition forces were coming. They evacuated with perfect timing, leaving just hours before the fleets arrived. There were no survivors to question, no prisoners to interrogate, no evidence of where they had gone. Admiral Kang Ho had been sent to end this nonsense once and for all. His orders were simple, proceed to the human home system. Demand immediate surrender and compliance with coalition authority if the humans refuse destroy. Enough of their infrastructure to make resistance impossible that Admiral had not expected this mission to be difficult. 300 warships against one primitive world should have been over before it began, but 6 hours had passed since he had transmitted the surrender demand, and the humans had not responded at all. Sir, the communications officer called out from his station. Still no response from the human planet. They received our transmission, but they have not sent any reply. Kang Ho growled deep in his throat, showing his sharp teeth. The sound made several junior officers step back nervously. How could an entire species simply ignore a surrender demand from the most powerful military force in the galaxy? Perhaps they do not understand the seriousness of their situation, suggested the tactical officer. They are a young species. Maybe they think this is some kind of negotiation. The Admiral shook his massive head, sending his neck spines rattling. No species was that naive. The humans had been in space for decades. They knew what coalition fleets could do. They had seen the aftermath of other conquests, so why were they not responding? What were they planning, sir? The scanner operator suddenly shouted, making everyone on the bridge jump. I am detecting a ship approaching from the planet. Every pair of eyes turned to the main viewing screen. A single vessel was rising from the atmosphere of Earth, moving with smooth grace through the void of space. It was small compared to the coalition battleships, no bigger than one of their escort frigates. The ship had clean lines and smooth curves, unlike the angular, aggressive designs favored by coalition engineers. It moved without the massive engine flares that coalition ships needed to achieve such speeds. There was something almost elegant about the way it glided between the waiting warships. Just one ship. Admiral Kang Ho stared at the screen in disbelief. Are the humans completely insane? Do they think one tiny vessel can stand against our entire fleet? The human ship showed no fear as it approached the coalition formation. It made no aggressive moves, but it also showed no signs of surrender. It simply took a position directly in front of the Admiral's flagship, as if it had every right to be there. The vessel was close enough now that the bridge crew could see details of its construction. The hull appeared to be made of some kind of smooth metal that reflected the light of nearby stars in strange patterns. There were no visible weapons ports, no obvious shield generators, no external signs of the technology that kept it moving. Sir, incoming transmission from the human vessel. Put it on screen immediately. The viewing screen flickered and changed, showing the interior of the human ship. The bridge was smaller than any coalition vessel, but it seemed more advanced somehow. The displays were brighter, the controls more responsive, the overall design more efficient. A human face appeared on the screen, and Admiral Kang Ho felt a moment of surprise. The man looked young, maybe 30 years by human standards, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations or medals of rank. I am Captain Minho of the Earth Defense Ship Taekwondo, the human said, speaking perfect coalition standard language. I am here to discuss your surrender. The bridge of the coalition flagship fell completely silent. Every officer and crew member stared at the screen in shock. No one moved, no one spoke, no one even breathed. Then Admiral Kang Ho began to laugh. The sound started as a low rumble in his chest, then grew into a booming roar that echoed through the bridge. His massive frame shook with amusement, and several smaller crew members had to steady themselves against their stations. Our surrender, the Admiral gasped between fits of laughter. Human, you face 300 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy with nothing but one small vessel. Perhaps you should reconsider who should be surrendering to whom. Captain Minho remained perfectly calm throughout the Admiral's outburst. His expression never changed, and his hands remained steady on the arms of his command chair. When the laughter finally died away, the human smiled, and something about that smile made the Admiral's amusement disappear completely. Admiral, with all due respect, I think you have misunderstood the situation, the human said quietly. We are not here to surrender, we are here to accept yours. The words hung in the air like a poison cloud spreading through the bridge. Admiral Kang Ho felt his scales shift color as confusion replaced his earlier confidence. What did this human mean? How could one ship possibly threaten 300? But as He stared into those calm brown eyes. Admiral Kang Ho realized that Captain Minho was not joking. The human was completely serious. He truly believed that his single small vessel could somehow force the surrender of the entire coalition fleet. The question was why.